The world got a poor progress report card from the UN's weather agency, which warned that efforts to cut fossil fuels that contribute to global warming are falling short, while the effects of warming are more visible than ever. Last year was officially named the hottest on record by the World Meteorological Organization, which predicted 2024 could be another year of record heat. These data help set the stakes for the 2024 presidential race. Whoever wins will be in office until 2029. Crucial years for the planet, since scientific consensus says humans need to slash emissions in half by 2030. To think through what questions voters should have in mind when the election comes up, we decided to call environmental scientists and policy experts to figure out what questions voters should use to evaluate President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump on climate change. First, they said Americans should be concerned about how the next president deals with climate effects we're already seeing, like rising waters and killer heat waves in places unequipped to handle them, like the Pacific Northwest. Second, will they stay in the UN's Paris Agreement and push other global leaders to cut emissions? Third, are they going to build new EV charging stations and power lines which promote the transition from fossil fuels to cleaner ones? And will they not approve more new leases for oil and gas drilling? To fill out some of this, we're joined by one of the experts we spoke to, Leah Stokes. She is an Anton Vonk Associate Professor of Environmental Politics at the University of Santa Barbara. Thank you so much for joining us. Sorry, I got caught in my throat there. Let's start with a threshold question. Do both candidates believe that mankind contributes to the warming of the planet?
Unfortunately, no. We have in former President Trump a climate denier. The fact is that he appointed people to lead key agencies like the Department of Energy and the Environmental Protection Agency, which don't, the people who didn't even believe in climate science. And when you compare that to President Biden, by far the strongest climate president in American history. I mean, it's just comparing apples and oranges here. We've got someone who doesn't believe in climate change and someone who really has been an amazing champion for taking on this problem.
So now to the question of leasing. President Trump has promised that he's going to, in his words, drill, baby, drill, quoting Sarah Palin from a past campaign, on U.S. land and in U.S. waters. Now, Joe Biden has approved new drilling on U.S. land and in waters, despite promising in 2020 to do no drilling, period. And oil production in the U.S. is at, I think, historic heights. So help us understand those two positions and what that means for the environment.
Well, when it comes to former President Trump, it's even worse than you suggest. His own words is that he would like to be a dictator on day one to drill, drill, drill. That is literally what this person has said. I don't think that we should have a dictator running the federal government, let alone someone who wants to use that kind of power for fossil fuel extraction. When you compare that to current President Biden, the fact is that he did make a campaign promise to stop oil extraction, fossil fuel extraction on federal lands and waters, and he kept that campaign promise until a Trump appointed judge overturned it. And so, yes, we are at a period right now where there's very large amounts of fossil fuel extraction, but that isn't because President Biden hasn't made great efforts to move us off of fossil fuels.
One of the challenges that raised certainly by former President Trump, but lots of conservatives over the years, has been the mix between efforts meant to ameliorate the contributions to climate change and the U.S. economy. Has it gotten harder to talk about those balances, creating and getting to the right balance in recent years? And how should we think about a leader that does that effectively, that talks about that balance and recognizes that there's obviously a trade-off?
Well, I think increasingly that just isn't the case. We are seeing billion-dollar weather disasters year after year, and the cost of not acting on climate change is piling up. That scientific report that just came out showed that we've just finished the hottest decade in modern recorded history. And we're seeing things like forest fires and drought and heat waves that are killing Americans. So, not acting on climate change is terrible for the economy. By contrast, what President Biden has done is he has invested hundreds of billions of dollars that have really been matched by even more money from the private sector to build clean energy manufacturing here in the United States. And that is actually reinvigorating our economy because it's helping to build, clean technology here in the United States through good paying jobs, often that are unionized. So that trade-off that we often think of between the economy and the environment, that doesn't really exist anymore. And President Biden has really shown us a way that we can act on the climate crisis that is really good for the economy.
Though it does, at a micro level, of course, exist for the people who are in businesses that rely on the old energy economy. So that has obviously effects on people's actual lives and on politics as well.
Yeah, but we can't discount that pollution itself also is really bad for everyday Americans. When you think about frontline communities who are getting, for example, cancers at really high rates in places like the Gulf Coast, that has real impacts on Americans' lives too. And the amazing thing is that the big climate laws that President Biden signed included transition assistance to help people in, for example, former coal communities, other fossil fuel communities transition to the clean economy. So it's not about leaving people behind. It's about protecting Americans by making sure that we have clean energy and that we don't put pollution onto everyday communities, primarily lower income communities, poorer communities, and communities of color, because that's not really good for the United States either.
Leah Stokes with the University of California, Santa Barbara. Thank you.